Hey everyone, welcome back. So, advanced rapport tactics, huh? Gotta admit, when I first saw that title, I thought we were going full pickup artist on this one. Maybe even learning some Jedi mind tricks.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Turns out it's actually a lot more interesting than that.
Definitely.
We're diving into a series of audio lessons by this guy, Joseph Matthews. And some of his insights are surprisingly deep.
Yeah, what's fascinating to me is that he goes way beyond the surface level stuff.
Yeah.
Like forget matching and mirroring. He's talking about like a fundamental shift in how you approach connecting with people.
It's more like a philosophy than a set of techniques.
Exactly.
Yeah, I was kind of expecting, a bag of tricks, but it feels more like uncovering a whole new way of seeing the world.
Exactly. He even uses this story about Anthony Robbins getting a date with a woman across a room without even approaching her.
Wait, what? How is that even possible?
That's what I thought. But then Matthews explains that it's all about tapping into this thing called the law of entrainment. It's this natural tendency for people to kind of sync up when they're in close proximity.
Okay, so it's not magic, it's science.
Sort of. Think of it like grandfather clocks.
Yeah.
You put two of them in the same room, and eventually their pendulums will start swinging in unison, just from being near each other.
Whoa, that's kind of trippy. So we're all like unconsciously syncing up with each other all the time.
Exactly. But here's the catch. Matthews says negative thoughts and judgments can actually block this natural process.
So basically, if you're walking around with a head full of self-doubt and anxiety, you're less likely to connect with people, even on a subconscious level.
That's the idea. It's like you're putting up a wall that prevents that natural flow of energy and connection. And Matthews argues that this is where a lot of people get stuck. They're so focused on themselves and their own insecurities that they miss out on the opportunity to truly connect with others.
So it's not about learning some secret handshake. It's about clearing out the mental clutter so you can actually be present with the other person.
Precisely. And this is where intention comes in. Matthews is really big on this. He says that if you're trying to use rapport for conquest or manipulation, it's going to backfire spectacularly.
Right, it makes sense. You can probably smell that kind of energy a mile away, right? Like a used car salesman who's just trying to close the deal.
Exactly. Matthews even uses the word slimy to describe that kind of vibe. He says that when your intention is off, it creates a disconnect, even if you're using all the right techniques.
So how do you cultivate the right intention? What are some practical tips for building genuine rapport without feeling like a manipulator?
Well, Matthews suggests paying attention to the other person's energy or tone.
Mm.
And he's not just talking about whether they're like hyper or chill. It's more nuanced than that. He actually uses the example of a Scientologist tone scale to map out different energetic states.
A Scientologist tone scale. Okay, that's definitely not something I was expecting to hear about. But I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
Well, it might sound a little out there, but bear with me. Matthews argues that we tend to connect more easily with people who are within a similar tone range as ourselves. And if someone is too far outside our range, they might even become practically invisible to us.
So like, if someone is radiating pure joy and I'm feeling down in the dumps, they might as well be wearing an invisibility cloak.
That's the idea. And Matthews says that the real challenge and the reward comes from building rapport with people who are outside your usual tone. It stretches your skills and opens you up to a whole new world of experience.
It's like expanding your comfort zone, right?
Yeah,
Pushing yourself to connect with people you wouldn't normally gravitate towards.
exactly. And that leads us to another key point, subtlety. Matthews stresses that when it comes to the actual techniques, less is more.
Okay, so I shouldn't be mimicking someone's every move like a mime. Where do you draw the line between mirroring and just being creepy?
Well, Matthews says that while obvious mirroring can sometimes work, it can also come across as insincere or even manipulative. He recommends paying attention to more subtle cues like tempo,
Tempo. What do you mean by that?
things like walking speed, breathing, rate of speech. He even talks about matching your breathing or eye blinks to someone's heartbeat. But he cautions that this takes a lot of skill and should only be attempted if you're truly comfortable with the person.
Whoa, that sounds a little intense. I think I'll stick to mirroring breathing patterns for now. But seriously, what happens if you mess up these subtle techniques? Do you just instantly break rapport?
It's definitely possible. Matthews emphasizes that intention plays a huge role in how your actions are perceived. If you're coming from a place of genuine curiosity and connection, your subtle mirroring will likely be seen as flattering or even endearing.
But if you're trying to pull a fast one.
It's going to backfire big time. Remember that slimy energy we talked about? People can sense when you're being genuine versus when you have an ulterior motive.
So it's all about checking your intentions at the door,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Remember, the goal is to create a mutually fulfilling experience, not just to score or conquer. And speaking of conquest, Matthews has some strong words for those who approach rapport with that mentality.
Okay, lay it on us. What's his take on the whole pickup artist approach?
He's not a fan, to say the least. He warns that using rapport solely for conquest can lead to feelings of emptiness and ultimately doesn't serve anyone involved.
So it's a hollow victory.
Exactly. Matthew says that real connection comes from genuine interest in the other person, from wanting to understand their world and what makes them tick.
It sounds like he's advocating for a more mindful and respectful approach to connecting with people.
Absolutely. He uses this interesting analogy to illustrate his point. He says that everyone has two radars operating the cock, which is driven by pure physical attraction,
Okay, wow, that's a vivid image.
and genuine curiosity, which is more about intellectual and emotional engagement.
I see his point. If you're only operating on hormonal radar, you're missing out on a whole other dimension of connection.
Exactly. Matthews argues that building rapport solely from hormonal desire creates this hidden agenda that can actually sabotage the interaction. He encourages us to seek out people who genuinely intrigue us, even if there isn't an immediate physical attraction.
So ditch the conquer and move on mentality and embrace genuine curiosity.
Exactly. And that's where things get really interesting.
So we're ditching the conquer and move on mentality and embracing genuine curiosity. But how do you actually put that into practice, especially if, that initial spark of attraction isn't there yet?
Well, that's where Matthew's insights on building rapport at a distance come in. Remember that Anthony Robbins story, how he made that connection from across the room?
Yeah, I'm still trying to wrap my head around that one.
It is pretty amazing. Matthew says you can actually create that sense of connection before you even say a word by using subtle nonverbal techniques. He calls it pacing and leading.
Pacing and leading sounds more like a dance move to me.
It kind of is in a way.
Yeah.
It all starts with observation. You subtly mirror your target's movements, their breathing, even their tempo.
Tempo, like how fast they're tapping their foot or something.
Exactly. It's about syncing up with their rhythm. Once you've established that sync, you can test the waters by subtly leading with a small movement, maybe scratching your chin or adjusting your posture, something subtle.
Okay, and if they follow your lead,
Bingo! You've got nonverbal rapport. From there, you can gradually increase the intensity of your leads, creating this sense of unconscious attraction.
wait, are you saying I could become a rapport magnet without even opening my mouth? That
Hmm?
sounds a little too good to be true.
It's not magic, but it can feel that way. Remember the law of entrainment we talked about. By subtly syncing up with someone, you're tapping into that subconscious desire for connection. It's like speaking their language without actually saying anything.
So it's like you're sending out these subliminal signals like, hey, we're on the same wavelength.
Exactly. But Matthews emphasizes that this has to be genuine. If you're too focused on the outcome, or you come across as forced or creepy even, it's going to backfire.
Right. It has to be playful and authentic. Like you're enjoying the dance, not just trying to get to the final step.
You got it. And think about it. Haven't you ever felt that instant connection with someone where you just clicked without even knowing why?
Totally. Like there's just this unspoken understanding. Maybe it was just the way they moved or their energy.
That's the power of nonverbal rapport. It bypasses the conscious mind and speaks directly to those deeper, more primal desires for connection.
Okay, you've piqued my curiosity with this nonverbal rapport thing. But let's say you have established that initial connection. What's next? How do you take it deeper?
That's where Matthews introduces this really interesting concept he calls the second position shift.
Second position shift. Sounds like something out of a martial arts movie.
It's more about mental agility than physical moves. It's about stepping into the other person's shoes, truly trying to understand their world and their feelings from their perspective.
So it's like empathy on steroids.
Yeah.
Putting yourself in their mental and emotional space.
That's a great way to put it. Matthews tells this really interesting story about a checkout girl to illustrate this. He was at the supermarket, and he noticed this attractive girl working the checkout who seemed really tired and bored.
So he saw an opportunity and decided to hit on her.
Actually, no. Instead of just going through the motions of the transaction, he made a conscious effort to connect with her. He wanted to acknowledge her experience, let her know he saw her.
So what did he say? Did he use some clever pickup line?
Nothing like that. He kept it simple and genuine. He might have said something like, "Wow, you must be tired from standing all day," or "It looks like it's been a busy day."
Really? Something that simple.
It's not about the words themselves, it's about the intention behind them. It's about communicating, "I see you, I acknowledge your experience, and I care."
That's pretty powerful. So what was her reaction?
She lit up.
Hmm.
Matthew says she actually started chatting with him about her life, even though there was a line of people behind him. And he attributes that to his ability to make that second position shift, to see her and connect with her on a human level.
So it's not just about mirroring their behavior. It's about understanding the emotions and experiences behind it.
Exactly. And Matthew says the deeper the rapport, the more accurate your insights into the other person's world will become. You start to develop an almost intuitive understanding of their thoughts and feelings.
Wow, that's incredible. But how do you actually develop that kind of intuition and connection? It sounds like it takes years of practice.
Matthews believes it starts with letting go of self-consciousness and tapping into that childlike sense of wonder and curiosity we all had before, social conditioning and insecurities got in the way.
Yeah, it's like when you're a kid, you don't have all those anxieties about impressing people or scoring.
Right.
You're just open to connecting, and that makes you magnetic.
Exactly. And Matthews argues that if we can recapture that sense of playfulness and genuine interest, our interactions become much more authentic and fulfilling.
So instead of focusing on the outcome of the interaction, we should prioritize the experience of connecting, regardless of where it leads.
You got it. And here's the interesting thing. Matthews argues that this approach actually leads to deeper, more satisfying connections in the long run.
So the less you try to force it, the more likely it is to happen.
Exactly. When you're not putting pressure on yourself to perform, you're more relaxed, more present, which makes you more attractive to others.
It's like they can sense that you're not coming at them with an agenda. You're just there to connect, and that's refreshing.
It is. And it creates a space for genuine connection to emerge.
This is all making a lot of sense. We've talked about intention, energy, nonverbal cues, and this second position shift. Seems like trust is also a crucial ingredient in building rapport. How does Matthews address that?
He's got some really interesting insights on trust. He explains that it operates largely on an unconscious level.
So we might not be able to articulate why we trust or distrust someone, but our gut feeling is usually pretty accurate.
Exactly. Our unconscious mind is constantly picking up on these subtle cues from others. And these cues either build or erode trust, often without our conscious awareness.
That makes sense. We've all had that experience where we meet someone and instantly feel like we can trust them. Or conversely, get a weird vibe, even if we can't explain why.
Right. And Matthew says this unconscious communication plays a huge role in attraction and seduction. He says women are especially attuned to these cues. They can sense when someone is being genuine versus when they have an ulterior motive.
So if you're trying to use rapport tactics to manipulate or deceive someone, they're probably going to sniff you out even if they can't put their finger on why.
Exactly. And that brings us back to intention. If your goal is to trick someone or pressure them into something they don't want, your energy is going to be off. It'll backfire.
So how do we make sure our intentions are aligned with building genuine rapport? Matthews has talked about the importance of curiosity and respect, but how do those translate into tangible actions?
Well, he emphasizes that seduction, when done right, is about invitation, not coercion. It's about creating a space where the other person feels safe, seen, and respected, and then inviting them to participate in a mutually enjoyable experience.
It's less about conquering and more about co-creation, like you're building something together rather than one person trying to, dominate the other.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. And, Matthews argues that this approach is not only more ethical, but it's also more likely to lead to a truly fulfilling experience for everyone involved.
It makes you wonder how much we miss out on because we're so focused on like getting something from the other person rather than just, being present and enjoying the interaction.
Oh, absolutely. When we approach these interactions with an agenda, it's like we're putting up all these walls that prevent genuine connection. We're not really seeing the other person. We're just seeing what we want from them.
It's almost like we're trying to fit them into this box that we have in our heads rather than appreciating them for who they truly are.
That's such a great point. And it goes back to that idea of the second position shift, right? It's about letting go of our own preconceived notions and really trying to see the world from the other person's perspective.
So to bring this all back to our listener, what are some key takeaways from this deep dive into advanced rapport tactics?
Well, I think the biggest takeaway is that building authentic rapport, it's less about technique and more about intention. It's about approaching others with genuine curiosity, respect, and a desire to connect on a human level.
And it's about remembering that connection is a two-way street. It's not about forcing yourself on others or trying to control the outcome. It's about creating a space where both parties feel safe, seen, and respected, and allowing that connection to unfold organically.
Beautifully said. And I would add that it's also about remembering that we all have the capacity for a deep connection within us. It's about tapping into that innate human desire for belonging and sharing and letting go of the fear and insecurity that hold us back.
I think Matthew's message is ultimately one of hope and empowerment. He's reminding us that we don't have to be perfect or have all the answers to connect with others. It's about showing up with an open heart and a willingness to be present.
Exactly. And that's something we can all do, regardless of our social skills or experience.
So to leave our listener with a final thought-provoking question, if you could practice rapport building with one person completely outside your usual circle, someone you wouldn't normally interact with, who would it be? What could you learn from that experience? How might it stretch your understanding of yourself and the world around you?
That's a great question to ponder. And remember, it's not about forcing anything. It's about exploring, connecting, and keeping that childlike curiosity alive.
Beautifully said. We hope this deep dive into Joseph Matthews' insights has given you some food for thought and inspiration to take your rapport skills to the next level. Keep exploring, keep connecting, and keep diving deep.